this was introduced as a way to control, because humans were, multiplying, and we were kind of like out of control. So it was a way to maintain control. Now, in the 1600s, children weren't even seen as important or as humans. When you were a child and you were born and you got to a specific age, I think it was like very young, like 4, 5, 6, you were put to work straight away. Um, Children were seen more as a working force, and they were like taken away from their mothers straight away as well to like see a certain way. So the way humanity viewed children was like, they're not really important, they're not really anything, we're just using them for work. And that was a way to essentially make them do what I want them to do. And it was a disciplinary social control tactic. And we've unfortunately just maintained that still in today's world. And it's extremely, extremely damaging, as we can see, as there is a loneliness epidemic going on. We still live in the emotional dark ages, and 90% of, more than 90% of the families in the world fall into the category and definition of dysfunctional. So this is actually one of the main drivers to why we all feel the way we do, because we're brought up to learn to hate aspects of ourselves in order to survive. We're brought up to learn that we can't trust ourselves, and we've not really known what's going on. My teachings are relatively like very new in terms of in the world. These teachings aren't necessarily like, they're not standard, they've not been around for like years and years. They're very, very relatively new, because we're actually starting to recognize like, oh wow, this is what's actually going on. This comes from this, and it comes from this. And this is why I say, I'm a big fan of therapy. Like, I don't want to ever speak badly of therapy, but mainstream therapy more often than not teaches coping mechanisms. And that's because, not because they're like mainstream therapy is evil, or because it like, it's because when mainstream therapy, like the book of that and everything was written, we didn't know what was going on. So that was the best we could come up with. It's like, well, I'll teach you to distract yourself from it so you don't feel like that. And now we're learning that distracting ourselves from it just actually doesn't do anything. It just makes it worse. Like, because then it comes back with a vengeance. And we're also learning that essentially that voice that we learn to ignore is our intuition. And we don't trust ourselves, so we don't trust that voice anymore. And that voice isn't necessarily a voice. It's communicated to us through emotions as well. And we learn to ignore our emotions. Don't cry. Big boys don't cry. Big girls don't cry. Like, you're not allowed to be angry. So we learn to completely eradicate and ignore that voice. And that voice just tries to get louder and louder. And if you learn to stop listening to it, then it tries to communicate with you by making you sick. So it will give you certain genetical, diseases and things like that, and pain here and there and everything. And that's why now we know, it's like very, very well known and very documented, that most illnesses are because of your mental health, because of your mental state. So
Okay.
that's the level that it got to, essentially.